Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Majella and Carlie, two romantasy-obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Hello, welcome to Fate of the Podcast. I'm Carlie.
And I'm Majella, and today we are doing a deep dive into Heir of Fire, the next installment in the Sarah J.Maas series, Throne of Glass, which we are working our way through. And we cannot wait to talk about it because things, as in all romantasy books and series, things are starting to heat up. Things are starting to bubble. And so there's some great characters that are introduced, and there are some directions that the plot is going to take us in that we did not expect. And Carlie and I are going to discuss what we loved about it in this episode. But Carlie, first tell me, what are you currently reading?
Well, I'm kind of between books because yesterday I finally finished the tandem read of Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms. Finally, I hear the crowds cheering. She's done it. It felt like I was reading those two books for 6 months. 1,300 plus pages. It was a ride and I loved it so much. So I have just this morning pulled Kingdom of Ash off the bookshelf and I'm nervously excited. And Majella's already told me, you need to allocate time. You'll need time to process. You need to be not interrupted at certain points. So I'm kind of, excited about jumping into that. On audio, I'm listening to Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Because I just really love, they're just easy to listen to while I'm out for my run or my walk or whatever. Am I reading anything else? No, that's it. What about you? What's on the Kindle?
Yes, well, I've just been away, so I definitely was only on the Kindle, but I've just been doing a little reread of the books in this series, just so I have them really fresh, because I did read them for the first time quite a while ago, over a year ago. They were basically my second series. I think I did a few smaller ones in there, but I went from ACOTAR to from Blood and Ash, and then jumped into Throne of Glass. So it has been quite some time. And I have found that I have picked up Kingdom of Ash to reread a couple of times because it is just, as Carlie will soon discover, it is so layered. And I think that the journeys that the characters go on, they actually need some time to assimilate. It's such a big journey for some of those key players. And some of the scenes are so intense that I think that you can't really absorb them the first time. I think you absorb them in different ways. The first time you read it, it might be with this kind of aspect of shock and awe. And the second time you might pick up a few more of the nuances through it, and it becomes a little bit kind of heartbreaking. And then underneath it again, there's this kind of nostalgia. It's an interesting thing to reread, but because it is so big, and there's multiple point of views, I've actually found that I've reread that particular book almost as a standalone multiple times, because you can actually just almost read you can just read Manon's story through it and pick out her chapters, or you can just read Dorian's story. I love reading Aelin and Rowan's story the most, but they all tie together with these beautiful threads. So I wanted to reread Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, specifically because we're about to dive into those ones. So I did a quick reread of those, and I just finished the trilogy by Carissa. Broadbent, The Mother of Death and Dawn is the last book. The War of the Lost. the Lost Hearts. And as I said to Carlie at multiple points, I actually felt like afterwards I needed a rest because those characters worked so hard. Like I just was like, just come on. Like it was like every time they won a battle, there was another war. Every time one baddie was killed, there was another. I was just like I almost feel like she could have written that book, that trilogy, and ended it sort of with one storyline. It was still so complex and so beautiful, and there was such a beautiful character arc for many of those um, people in there. But it was like there was like character arc and then character arc and then character arc, and then by the end, I was just like whoa, like I'm exhausted for all of you. Like this is a lot. You know, it was so good though, but I actually feel like I went in expecting it to be more like the Nixia series, which is the one that we're going to review soon. Um, the Serpents of the Night and I can never remember.
There's a
Anyway,
cursed king in there somewhere too.
yes. Um, and so that definitely feels like that's a duology. It's lighter in a way. I guess it's more like there's a Hunger Games esque. Everyone's fighting to the death, and then there's a reclamation of a throne. And that feels like an opening chapter in this book. Like I was just like, okay. So by the end of it, it was so good, and I loved the characters so much. But it almost felt like, I don't know. It almost felt like it should have been almost spread out over 5 books, just to give us a bit more breathing room in the pacing. Like I kind of felt like could they just have had a
Carissa
little
went
downtime?
hard and fast.
Yes. So I feel like that's all my reading at the moment is like, because, you know, the Throne of Glass series, it starts like from Heir of Fire onwards, there's a lot of action. There is a lot of stuff happening and there's a lot of uncertainty because there's so many enemies in play, I guess, that you're not sure who is really on your side, the side of Aelin, I guess. And then that Mother of the Dawn series is like, so I just feel like almost a little bit battle weary. I'm like, I just, and so when I downloaded, yes, I mean, I never read light books really, but Carlie and I are going to do a tandem read together. So we're reading the same book and we're going to film our reactions so we can see if we reacted to the same chapters and or if, you know, one of us read about a death and the other one didn't even notice it. It's just like, oh yeah, that person died, whatever. And the other person's sobbing, being like, that person died. But I did just download 2 books that were very heavily featured on my TikTok in the last week with a lot of uh, I guess people saying that they were very similar to that Sarah J.Maas worlds. So it was Spark of the Everflame and Once Upon a Broken Heart. So both of those I've downloaded, but we haven't decided what book we're going to do yet. So I'm just in a bit of a pause because I feel like we need to decide, and also I just need a breather. I just need a bit of, and knowing that we're heading into like, because I've just reread the Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows to get up to this, and then Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. That's the tandem read you just did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And we will talk about that when we get to it because I did tandem read and Carlie did tandem read, and it'll be interesting to see our experiences. And then Kingdom of Ash is the thickest book I own on my bookshelf.
I feel like I need you in a really good space to hold me whilst I read Kingdom of Ash. So you just need to keep some energy reserved for me going, what the actual fuck is going on? I'm not okay.
Yes, and I would have loved a support buddy as I went through it because there was times when I was literally like at night, like lying in bed, just like with tears coursing down my face, being like, why? Why would she do that? But also, like, how could she not do, like, you know, like none of it felt unnecessary. It all made sense, but it was also like, I think when you become invested in the world and the characters, it becomes very hard to, because in romantasy, one of the things that I love the most about it, and one of the strongest pulls towards this genre, is there is usually 99% of the time a happy ever after for the main characters. Like, I feel that even though I know there's a lot of stuff happening, I will get a happy ending in that they will survive and their love will prevail, and I will be able to sleep at night knowing that there is good in the world. But everyone else is collateral damage. Could be anyone. You know, you're there, and if you start having feelings for a side character, you know it's going to be bad. You know, like you're like, will this person make it?
Yeah, I'm always like, I want to put bets on before I even go into it and just be like, okay, this is my sealed envelope of who I think's not going to be at the end, and then I'll open it.
You should definitely do that with Kingdom of Ash. That would be so great because it's so interesting.
There's so many.
You know, like, yes,
There's
but
so
it's also
many.
like, it's not even just deaths that are affecting. Like, there's just things that, like, things can happen where you just think that is so unfair. You know, like, it's not just a death. It's just like the way the cookie has crumbled for that character.
Well done for not spoiling anything there. Great segue.
I would never.
Great segue into Heir of Fire when you said, you know, you become invested with these characters, because I felt like this being book 4 in the series was when I started to become more invested in and adore the characters, and we get introduced to new characters as well in Heir of Fire. But I do remember that feeling, and I messaged Majella saying, I feel like shit's about to go down. I feel like it's really kicking off. I feel like book 4, we're like, okay, action time, action stations. This is about to take off. And she was like, yes, it is. Being very, very good at not saying too much.
I just have all these memes and things saved for you to be like, when you get to that chapter, I will send you this and you will get it.
And it is interesting now, I've just finished the tandem, like where I'm at, nearly at book 7, is that I've accidentally seen some memes and things, and now I'm like, oh, like it does make sense now. I understand that part. So what I'm going to say before we dive in to our favourite parts of Heir of Fire and really explore it is, obviously, this episode is full of spoilers. So if you haven't read Heir of Fire, you need to just put us on mute, put us on pause, go and do that, and then this episode will be here waiting for you. And of course, we will be waiting for you always, as always, in our Instagram and on our TikTok about, like, if you need a support crew, if you have any questions, if you just want to have a rant, we're here for that. So let's dive in. So Heir of Fire, book 4.
We love context, Carlie. So why don't you just give a brief summary of sort of what happens in the book, and then we'll dive in. See if you can do it in like 4 sentences. Just be like, Selena arrives here, this happens, this happens, this happens, and here we are.
4 sentences. Okay, so Selena has arrived in Wendlin. I can't do 4 sentences. I cannot. I am not brief. She's got a little bit. She's drinking, she's gambling, she's fighting, but Rowan then finds her. So we get introduced to Rowan. That is not a small thing. That is not a small thing. For what comes.
And what is Wendlin?
Oh, gosh. Wendlin is where she was sent to kill the royal family.
But who lives there?
I can't remember.
The Fae. It's the land of the Fae, where magic still exists.
I was going to say which royal family. I'm like, I can't remember because it's bloody confusing. There's so many royal families. But yes, it is. Absolutely. Just, the Fae. Yes. Okay. So we get into Kale sent her as part of the deal to protect her, right? Got her away from the King of Ardalan.
Yes.
And the deal was that she was going to go kill the royal family or something over there. That was the kind of the scheme with the king. But Kale was just really trying to protect her and get rid of her out of the kingdom. And so she had no intention of going and doing that and following through on that. But then Maeve sent Rowan to find her, to train her. Page 17 was like my first, like, oh my God, here we go. Like, how quick into the book? Page 17, we've got Rowan, and he despises her, and she despises him. And it's very obvious that they are not happy that they are having to be in each other's vicinity. But I really loved the introduction of Rowan, and I just knew that he was going to be someone very, very, very special to her because they hated each other so much. The old enemies to lovers. I was like, they despise each other. They're repulsed by each other. He doesn't want to have anything to do with her. He's only doing this because his queen has sent him. They are going to be, at some point, like lovers.
Yes, and he is like the strongest fae in the land. You know, he like someone who can match her.
Well, yeah, definitely at this point, like you're like, well, he's obviously more powerful than her. But as the book progresses and he trains her and sparks that ember inside her of her power and her true power, they definitely do match each other by the end of the book. But at the start, like she was just a little drunkard, a little little wild thing that he was
a
like
bundle of trauma.
Pretty much,
you know. She's got to break up with Kale, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but what I do when a character is introduced is I go straight to TikTok and I look for the fan pictures, like the beautiful artwork that people make of these characters. And I was like, oh, Rowan. Like I fell instantly in lust with the man. The tattoo. And I'm not usually a face or neck tattoo kind of woman, but that was okay on him. The white hair, the eyes, you know. I don't know if you do that, but I love to have a picture, a visual in my mind. I'm like, that's Rowan. And I saved it to my camera roll.
Really? I don't look to anyone else to create my visuals because I actually find that I have such a strong visual representation straight away that I don't. And I actually feel like the TikTok doesn't capture Rowan the way I see him in my head. Like I don't think I feel like he's more attractive in my head. Online he seems almost too fey, like too pointy in a way or something. Whereas I feel like in my head he seems more almost like that Cassian build that they show on TikTok, but with the white hair and kind eyes. But you know, she often talks about the unforgiving planes of his face, and like he is described as a very, especially at the start where they dislike each other and you find out more. Like I feel like it was very obvious when they met because of the way he was described, but also that I think in this point in the book, like she hasn't found her mate or her big love. She hasn't, you know, she's it could have been Sam, but he's not around. She lost him, and then she kind of, you know, had a dalliance with Dorian, who then stepped back and let Kale come in, and Kale was this kind of soothing balm who was like, men can be good, and you can trust us, and we will do the right thing. And then that has now been kind of smashed, and Kale can't actually love all of her. Like he is repulsed by her magic. And then now she is sort of, in a way, almost being banished. Yes, to save her, but also like there is no one who, you know, there is no one that matches her, that there's no one that understands her, that there's no one that she's shouldering everything alone. And I think that she is ripe for a love interest to come in. So it was that kind of like, oh, Rowan has appeared. Like, will he be the one? I mean, because sometimes it's like, you know, there is a mentor sort of mentee thing that doesn't develop. And then, but because he almost steps into that wise sage energy. And so I was like, I wonder if this is going to be that where, you know, he molds her to become the ultimate weapon and her love story will still come alongside that with someone else, you know, like someone who will soften her. Like sometimes you have the mentor sage turns into a weapon, sharpens kind of thing. And then you have the love that comes in to be like, I see you underneath all that. And I love I love you for the
Yeah.
ugliness and for your brutality to save the world, but you can be soft with me because you are safe. And I was like, ooh, is
Mm,
Rowan going to step into the mentor, or is he going to
yeah.
be the, the love kind of thing? And
Yeah.
obviously they can be both, but I feel like it wasn't obvious at the beginning which way. And she was
No.
also like, I think it is that kind of like attracts like. Like her energy is, she is all broken glass. She is shards. Is she will cut anyone. She is so broken and hurt and shattered by the fact that she can't save people that she loves, that the people that she loves can't love her, that she can't save anyone, that her kingdom is still, falling apart, that an evil ruler is still, taking over the land. Her friend is now lost, like she doesn't even have her trusty dog with her anymore, like it's just like all the
Yeah.
things that have anchored her have gone. So I think it
Yeah.
was like she's turned up and it's like she is ready to be remade. And it's
Yeah.
like who will be with her as she goes through that journey.
Yeah. And she
Um,
doesn't want to be, and she resists it. And she's a petulant little thing for quite a long time. And Sarah continues that sort of question of like, where will it go with Rowan? Right. I think nearly even 3/4 of the book. It's quite a lengthy time where he really, is quite almost like just annoyed, like she's just an annoying little pest that he has to deliver to Queen Maeve. But the reason that she wants him, like she goes with him, is because she wants to meet Maeve. She's got questions to ask that Eleanor has, really pushed her to go and ask. And so, yeah, he's just so gruff, like, let's go, like, really short, kind of, smells her. She stinks because she's just been, unwashed. And, I'm taking you where you've been summoned, blah, 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 like that. But yeah, so interesting. Even under the gruffness, I'm like, this guy is hot. And this is gonna go somewhere. If a man did that in real life, I'd be like, you're an asshole, get away from me. Like wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole. But when it's a Fey warrior who's huge and, tattooed, it's okay.
I mean,
It's okay.
there is some talk though with um Rowan and how like physical they get with each other. So the way it's written and the way I read it was that there are these two like almost like untamed
Mhm.
energies, these two big people who are evenly matched, which is why I think that it doesn't feel like Rowan, but he does punch her straight in the face. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
but I feel like the way
Yeah.
it's been written is that they are warriors. They are both warriors. It's not a man and a female, like a male and a female. It's not, like it's like they're both fighting and kind of in a way, violence is their expression. But
Mhm.
there is some things where it's, people are being like, why are we glorifying that that's an okay? And I'm like, well, because when this is a fantasy world and
Yeah.
no one, like none of us have ever, and also she is more powerful than him in the end, like the power that is in her. But also like they're both reacting from like just lifelong trauma that has
Yeah.
just been festering for a long time. So it's almost like that is like them lancing their own boils and stuff. But it is a little bit hard to watch because I feel like especially getting Selena's like POV, you can she's broken. She's really struggling. Like the light in her, literally and figuratively, like her flame has gone out or is going out, and the light in her, the hope in her, is dwindling, and he is in a way blowing it out. Like he is that last. She's like, I need someone to help me spark up, and he is like so broken that he is like, I'm not here to save you because I can't save myself, even though he
Yeah.
can't say those words. But
Yeah.
it is a big, like, and it is, I think, out of all of Sarah's characters, this is the slowest burn, I think, out of all of the romances anywhere. Like, it does cross across like two or three books. Like, it's, until anyway, I just am like, oh my God, like, come on. Like, surely, like, one of my favorite scenes is when she was broken and she was so broken and she was so cold and hungry and tired and she just went to bed and she was freezing and he had
Mm,
said some things to her that he really regretted and she had also yelled at him, but her light went out. Like I think that's where she like fully went into like a depressive state. And he came
yeah.
in through her bedroom window and picked her up and took her to his room and put her by the fire in a soft bed. And like
Yeah.
there was this like
Mm.
instant shift for me. I was like, oh, it's on. That's happening. It is love. I was like, together. They're together, guys. Everyone. Sarah's just told us. Rowan
Yeah.
and
And then
Selena.
she
It's
made you.
happening.
Then
It's
she
happening.
made you. She made you wait another couple of books though to get
So
any kind of.
long. Oh my God. Dear Lord.
I like it. Oh, I really like it. And we've got to remember as well, this is like a young adult book. I actually saw Heir of Fire in the young adult section at the library on Tuesday. And I was like, oh yeah, that book could be there, but maybe not Kingdom of Ash. So it is still, we've got to remember it is still in that young adult kind of section as well. We also early in this book get introduced to the witch clans. And I remember you saying, oh, wait for the witches, wait for the witches. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
there
they're
they
so
are.
good.
And you really love the witches. I don't mind them. I'm not like hysterically obsessed with the witches, even now that I'm on just finished book 7. But tell me about that with you. Like, what really grabbed you with the witches and meeting Manon, understanding the different clans? Like, that was really interesting and a new element. What do you love about the witches? Because I remember you being really excited for me.
I think it's
How
just
brutal? Is it
but
how brutal and like awful they are within this book?
I mean I feel like because it's there's something about the fact that they training these wyverns. So like, Abraxas is just like,
Yeah.
I feel like he is the symbol of like he is her external symbol of the goodness that is within Manon. And I think that she is such an interesting character because she is so ruthless and brutal and has been like raised to be evil incarnate in a way, like the true witch, where she will just kill you and eat you, and there is no feelings. Like they often, and she has this her witch coven, the 13. They are, meant to be the brutalist and the most ruthless, and they follow behind her with, unwavering loyalty, and um, there's no soft feelings. It's just they're soldiers, and there is no I guess humanity within them. And I think that even from the very first moment, when someone, I think it's just because when you know that a character is introduced, I never assume that that person is going to be terrible. So I'm like, oh, if they're starting off terrible, we're going somewhere. I'm going to love this person. And I think because I don't know if it's because I rode horses and like trained horses and stuff, but the whole like training, like picking their wyverns, or the wyverns picking them, the fact that she picked the underdog and the smallest, the bait wyvern, the one that was going to die, and then he loves flowers. He loves flowers, and he's so smart. Like he doesn't eat the poison
Yeah.
meat, and it's like he shows her the capacity she has for love and protection. And so I think I definitely remember that the witch story was interesting to me, but I think by the time you get to the end of the series and on the reread, there
Mm,
it just they feel you become more and more attached to them. Like you find out more and
okay.
more little side stories and that kind of thing. And I think that it's just a whole nother magic group as well. And you can see um, how much having sort of evil, unchecked rulers within their clan has caused such terrible division. And Like they could have been not necessarily like, like a peaceful, happy, but they could also be like not these
Mm,
evil, feared, cruel. They all have this capacity to live and love any
yeah,
race. But it definitely was the wyvern thing that I loved that story line of
yeah,
how they all and how they all bonded and I
yeah.
can't remember if Keely and Petra is in this one. Is it? The
I
scene with the
don't,
blue blood, or is that in the next one?
I don't know. I'd have to go
But there's
look a little
it
deeper.
just shows the loyalty and what
Oh,
happens
look,
when.
scene later on in another book where I was sobbing about the 13. I was like bawling my eyes out, which I won't spoil for anyone. But yes, that sisterhood, that yeah, that kind of reigniting of the humanity in Manon that you see over the coming books is very, very interesting storyline. But I mean, chapter 4 in Heir of Fire, it's like the first scene is she pulls her blood red cloak tightly around her and like just pretty much rips the throat out of a heap of farmers that come into her house. And you're like, whoa, whoa, who is this? Who is this character? So that was quite fun. But I did love learning about the witches, how the covens work, and yes, how they were set up from birth to fight, not question their queen, and to, as you said, just be absolute horrible creatures, all about death and destruction and trying to win back the wastes, which was their land.
I think that I do really enjoy the multiple POVs. I know that some people um, dislike flipping between all these characters, and I do feel like on a reread, it's really interesting because sometimes I just want to reread one set of characters' story again. Like I just want to reread what happened to Dorian, and so then I'm like flipping through
Mm-hmm.
the chapters. I don't want to read about the others, but I think on the first read, especially, it provides such a beautiful landscape of what's happening, both kind of in the physical sense of where people are in different countries and realms, and but also in terms of who's fighting what battle and why, like who's pitted against each other,
Yeah.
who are looking like they're going to become, you know, alliances and fight together.
Yes.
Um, so
Yes.
I
And
do
it
really
will
enjoy
be.
that.
Sarah obviously brings all of that together in the culmination of the series. So stick with it. If you're reading Air of Fire, you've just read it and you're like, oh gosh, more characters, more timelines, more people to understand, more battles, more continents. It does all come together really beautifully. I love this in chapter 9. I highlighted this, when you're talking about the character of Manon, Manon had been born soulless, her grandmother said, soulless and heartless as a black beak ought to be. She was wicked right down to the marrow of her bones. But the people in those wagons and the Duke, they smelled wrong and different and alien. Because that's, we've started to see, like, yes, she's being told that. Yes, we're being told that that's who she is. But you just get those little flickers from Sarah when she writes that, there's something else underneath. As you said, she's coming into contact with a part of her that maybe she hasn't allowed herself to understand or to accept. Where's that going to go? All that beautiful foreshadowing that we love in our fantasy books.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. I think Abraxas was such a big foreshadowing of her. I
yeah,
think that it's very hard to love an animal and to pick the underdog and to care about the injuries and to go above and beyond and do all these things for this wyvern and not have like this goodness within you. Like yes,
mm,
there's all these other little foreshadowings where they'll talk about like, she noticed a flash of hurt across one of her 13's face. And they're not meant to show any emotion. So it's almost like she's like, what? Why did that
yeah,
hurt her? Like, it's like it's this kind of, but with
lies.
the wyvern, I think it's like, it's very obvious that her heart is good. Like, she's just like, but she's perplexed by it. She's like,
Yeah,
why do I
what is
care about this? I have picked the runtiest, smallest, weirdest wyvern, the one that loves smelling flowers and like, is it's so interesting, like the softest, but is also is the
You see her
strongest in a
surprised.
way.
You see her surprised so many times. It's like, what is this sensation in my body that I've never felt before? And you're like, you as a reader, you're like, that's loyalty, or that's happiness, or that's that's a sense of romance. You really like this person, and you can see as a character, she's like, what is this sensation? Because it's just been black darkness, killing, death, destruction. And so it's really beautiful to see, even though she still over the whole series maintains this very armored kind of facade and still has that 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 darkness within her. Yeah, it's like just seeing this little kind of flower blossom, I guess, in this new world. So yeah, the Blackbeaks, all the witches, very cool storyline to weave in at this point. And it becomes pretty cool towards the end about how they are involved in it all. That's all I'm going to say. Selena isn't allowed to go and see Queen Maeve and go to Dorinel until her power is stronger, but also until she's able to move and shift into the Fae form and the human form and go back and forward. So that was really cool to see how and what she needed to discover in herself, believe in herself, rebuild in herself to be able to do that consistently and to be able to stay in the form for longer. And Rowan was the best mentor for that in the end. He did recognize, for me, I was like, oh, he does, because he understands how broken she is, because he's still grieving his wife that was killed 200 years ago. He's still broken. So he could recognize that at one point. I just felt that shift where he was like, far out. She's like me. She's broken like me. I can help her. I can teach her, and I'm going to teach her. And he becomes quite obsessed with that. But I think that a lot of people were like, well, he's just pushing her. I'm like, I think that he can just see her potential, and he wants her to feel that and connect with that. And he can see how powerful she can be. And so, yeah, that was cool. That was just cool to watch that over the arc of the story of how she stepped into and owned her Fae form just as much as her human form.
Yes, I think it was really interesting because it starts to bring in parts of her backstory and how much her magic had been, how she had viewed it as something that was just going to cause destruction and hurt people and was uncontrollable and was never going to be something that she could love and could use for good. Like it was like she couldn't even get close to her power. So she had all these, like he pushed her, yes, to get close, but it was almost like her fear and revulsion of herself, which, and also he had, Rowan had the similar journey. He had the revulsion of himself, of how power hungry he had been, and the consequences of that, which was the death of his partner and unborn child. So I think there was this interesting, like, well, watching Selena as a child, instead of her power being, beautifully fostered and celebrated and like, oh my God, this could be the thing that saves the world and keeps peace everywhere. It had been like, you can't go into a library because you'll burn it down. You can't go here because you'll hurt people. Like, what a huge burden to have to carry as a child, to be like, who I am
Is
at my
wrong.
core
Yeah.
and will hurt people. Like, I can't be trusted to be places, to be myself, because it could hurt people I love, or innocence.
Yeah. And we get introduced through that storyline, we get introduced to, now, it could be Aiden, it could be Adian. I'm not sure. I said Aiden in my head the whole time. Don't come at me if it's wrong. But we get introduced to that character a lot more too. And again, he's not who he appears to be when we first get introduced to him, and he's over in Adelan and he's having parties, but he's not really there. And so then, Kale starts investigating him. So that's when we get introduced to that kind of story arc, and why is he there and what's he doing, and is he good or not good? Is he going to turn on Aelin at some point? Is he going to support her? This is the storyline where there was a lot of questions there about who this guy was and what he was about and what he was going to do
and stuff. But we don't know if he's wants to, join Aelin to take back Terrasan, or if he's working for the King of Ardalan and he's corrupted, because he is wearing a black ring.
Yes,
so
he's wearing the ring.
Everyone assumes that he is under the power of the king and that kind of thing. He's one of the side characters that I feel like could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I feel like not until much later in the series do you really get a sense of who he truly is, and how important and powerful he is and will be to the outcome of the war. So I feel like there was a few characters that kind of popped up. Like I feel like Dorian's still there, but I haven't yet developed a big connection with Dorian in this book. Like I know he's there, and I know he's kind of like the Playboy prince, and like Selena didn't choose him; she chose Kale. I feel a little bit sorry for him because obviously he's the son of a terrible leader, and then obviously he has, probably from a very young age, because he's good looking, has been with lots and lots of women, and lots of women want to be with him for the wrong reasons, and he seems like a good person. But I feel like I'm still more invested in Kale than I am in Dorian. And then I feel like as this book progresses, we start to see more of Dorian, and you get to see more of his heart, and then he falls for a healer in the castle, Sorcha. How do you say her name?
Yes.
Sorcha. And love. So I'm like, this is bad. This is bad for her. Like she's here.
Run.
He's really into her. I expected it, but I still feel like I was really, that's when I started to really like connect to Dorian and his story when his own father found out, that they were, had feelings for each other and stuff. And then they also found out that Sorcha was a spy for the rebels. And, then the king beheaded her in front of Dorian and Kale. And then Dorian fought his dad so that Kale could get away. And that's when he became also enslaved. So it didn't end well for Dorian in this book. And it's a lot of setting up of, this book felt like a lot of setting up. Like there wasn't, you don't read it and get resolution and think, oh yes, that's happening and this is good. It's like, okay, here's another character. Okay, here's what's happening with this character. Okay, here's like the witches. Okay, here's Dorian. Oh, now Dorian's, had his kind of like, traumatic moment, and now he's also taken, and now Kale's like, lost Selena and also lost his best friend, and chose the wrong side in a way, like with the king, he's torn at his loyalties. We've got Rowan, but like, and there's, by the end there's a little bit of resolution with Rowan where you're like, okay, well, we know that they've got a connection and he will take care of her in a way, but is he her person? Because it feels like he could be her person, but nothing is. They're Karanam, so they can share power, which is a very important bond that doesn't happen very often. So they can, like, when they share blood, she can access Rowan's power and Rowan can access her power, and it's this thing that doesn't have to be romantic, but it often is. And so there is this special bond, and Selena has now found herself and has, found her ability to switch between human and fae, and she, has met Rowan's clan, And then the
Mm-hmm.
best bit at the end, obviously, where she's so sneaky, Selena. Or do we call her Aylin by the end? I think we call her Aylin by the end, don't we? Because Rowan keeps calling her Aylin, and she's like, "Don't call me that. That's not who I am." And he's like, well, he actually calls her Fireheart, which is
My
like
heart,
the
yeah.
most. I
Oh,
think when he called her Fireheart, I was like, "That's it.
oh,
They're mates. They're
signed,
definitely
sealed,
that is it." Yes.
done.
But
Oh
like
my god.
by the end, when she was like, "I can't leave him. I cannot leave him to be enslaved to this person," and because he has started to come alive, like she talks about how she sees the light in his eye, and he smiles a little, and they're sleeping together in the same bed but not sleeping together, and so there's a sense of like he's like, "I don't know what this is, like we need to take it slow, but let's try and walk back out of our pain together, like let's walk forward together," which I think is such a beautiful thing for a grumpy 500-year
Yeah.
old Fey warrior to say. Like he's like, I like it's like a really beautiful relationship communication tool to be like, I would like us to take a step forward, and I'm not sure what that looks like for me or for you, so let's just be gentle with each other. It's kind of like, oh, well. And also like he's taking care of her now, like and he tattooed her
Yeah.
scars and
Yes.
put her love stories, like the love stories of her people and Sam and Nehemia, over the scars that were caused by being in the salt mines when she was whipped. um but I think that that last bit where she's obviously like, "I will not leave without him,"
Mm.
and they had found the sword and the ring, and she bartered for him, and
Yeah.
she got the blood oath broken, and then
Yes.
he swore to her, like, and she didn't, like, it was, she was like, "This is the," he
Mm.
was like, "You need to do this." She was like, "I just want you to be free. I don't want you to be sworn to me. Like, please just be free." And he's like, and also because they have that telepathic conversational ability. And I'm just like,
Mm.
well,
And
I mean,
she said,
it's,
I don't want you enslaved to me. I won't be that kind of queen. And then he's like, I want to be, together, Fireheart. We'll find a way together, a court that will change the world. And then she says, well, do you promise to serve in my court, Rowan Whitethorn, from now until the day you die? I do. It's like a wedding. Until my last breath and the world beyond, to whatever end. Oh, page 517. Seeing this blossoming mate relationship, because I feel like even just saying love isn't enough. Like, it's not a blossoming love. It's so much deeper than that. And so much more magical than that. But seeing that whole scene, I just, blah. They're the ones that I message Majella and go, what is this series doing to me? What is this book doing to me? And then it finishes. That's not even the end, because then it kind of finishes around Adian being arrested, captured by the king and put in shackles and put down in the dungeon as well, because the king's realized that he's not under his control. And we know by then that he has been working with the rebels and working with Kale, and he wants Aelin to be the queen, and we know he's a good guy. And so now he's out of the picture, and you're also left at the end of this book with a bit of like, oh my God, is there any hope? Because we get a real high of Rowan being released from his blood oath to Maeve, and now being in Aelin's Selena's court. But then over here you've got these people who are trying to fight for the new world, and now they're struggling as well. So it's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster.
isn't it? Isn't it? I was just going to say, it is interesting with the rereads as well. It is, because once you know backstory, like or like future story, I guess, once you know what kind of happens, it often lends even more potency to certain scenes or things that I just remember reading the first time and going like, "Oh yeah, that's interesting," or like I literally just read it and was just like, "Cool." But like upon a reread, knowing what has happened, sometimes I'm just like, they have no idea what they're doing. Like, oh my God, like it's just like,
Clever again. that's why she's a brilliant author, when you can reread and see how she wove so many different character arcs, storylines, themes throughout such a long series, many thousands of pages, is so clever, so unbelievably clever. They were my favorite parts. I mean, there's so much. Again, every book is like, we could talk for 4 hours and go really in depth and look at all of the plot points, but they were the parts that jumped out at me. They were the characters that were new, that were like, yes, like I'm interested in where this is going to go. They were the love story that was developing. That was really important. And the introduction of Adian, the cousin, who knew her history and knows who she is at her core. That was wicked. So much in this book again, but they're our favourite bits. And, it really, those last few pages is Rowan and her on the ship heading back to Rifthold. So you're like, okay, what's going to happen when they get there? And she hasn't accomplished the king's mission. What's going to happen with Kale? Because she has respected how that relationship paused, I guess, when they said goodbye on the dock. She hasn't done anything with Rowan yet. She needs to make amends and make it right with him. And then literally the last sentence of the book is, she was Aelin, Ashriver, Galathinius, and she would not be afraid. And you're like, afraid of what? What's coming? And I straight away picked up Queen of Shadows and just kept going. So, fun one. Again, very cool. Talk to you soon. Ciao.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone, to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp or encouraged you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it, and drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.